Last time, we found out how Custer left some men behind at the Washita Massacre. Those handful of men were led by squadron leader Major Elliott. One of Elliott's company commanders was Captain Benteen, a man often blamed in history for leaving Custer to die. Please like, subscribe, Patreon, you know the deal. Benteen fought for the North in the American Civil War, eventually leading the 10th Missouri Cavalry and being disowned by his secessionist father. After the war, he was reassigned to the 7th U.S. Cavalry. It is then where he finally meets George Armstrong Custer. His first impression was that he was arrogant, a braggart, and immediately didn't like him. But they would serve together for 9 years. At the Washita, Benteen came across a young teenage boy with a pistol said to have been one of Black Kettle's sons. He called out to the boy to drop his weapon, but the boy fired and missed. Benteen tried to make gestures of peace and, unlike some other soldiers around him, made a real effort to not harm the boy, but to no avail. The teenage boy shot a few more times at Benteen, eventually hitting his horse and pinning him to the ground temporarily. As the boy raised his gun to shoot one more time at the now trapped Benteen, the captain shot him. Custer downplayed the casualties of the battle, saying he only lost one man, with a few wounded and some others missing. Those missing were Elliott's command, who were later found to be slaughtered. Benteen's experience and thoughts of the battle led him to criticize Custer in a letter to a friend, which was then published without his permission in a Missouri newspaper. Fast forward to 1876. Lakota and Cheyenne bands were asked to sell the Black Hills region to the US, and when they refused, they were labeled as hostile, and 3 army columns were sent to force them onto reservations. These columns were led by Generals Gibbon, Crook, and Terry, who would have the 7th under his leadership. Custer, however, wanting to be the first to find the natives, rushed forward a few days before Terry could catch up. The 7th was all by itself. On June 25th, about 12 miles out from the Little Bighorn, scouts told Custer of a big village. Custer, thinking he had been spotted and lost the element of surprise, decided to strike immediately, not waiting for any of the other columns, and divided his forces. Reno and Custer would make the main attack while Benteen was sent south to cut off any retreat and scout for more villages. In reality, Custer caught the village by total surprise, and if the attack hadn't stalled almost directly after it started with Reno, it might have actually worked. But it didn't. Reno's attack stopped and then went backwards, meaning Custer was now all by himself with thousands of natives between him and Reno. Benteen, who had been scouting for 2 hours before hearing the gunfire, started back north when Custer's messengers arrived, telling him to bring more ammo quickly. Once he got to the battlefield though, he witnessed a frightening sight. Custer was nowhere to be found, and Reno's shredded men were struggling towards him, being chased by hundreds of native warriors. Benteen stopped to get a hold of the situation and build defenses. He has been largely criticized then and now for stopping and not helping Custer, being called a coward or enacting some sort of revenge for Elliott's men at Washita. But after the attack died down on his end, he did begin to look for Custer. But he only got so far before being driven back by more native warriors. He knew he was in a bad situation and vastly outnumbered. To charge forward in order to try and find Custer would have been suicide. The only option left was to go back and hold out until one of the army columns arrived. Custer's backup were desperately fighting for their own lives, and were in no position to help the general. Custer's luck was gone. Benteen took charge of what was left of the 7th throughout the rest of the night, the entire next day on the 26th, and the following morning. He led charges, checked the advances of the native warriors, and kept most of his exhausted men alive until Terry's column appeared on the afternoon of the 27th. This has been Fast History with me, Eric, the LonePineWolfman, and remember, never stop learning.